Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kanchan Kumar. Um, I'm going to be introducing Mike. Uh, I've known Mike for some time now, and Mike has been extremely helpful in my own startup journey. I'm a startup founder. I run this company called Remitter, which is a cross-border payment company focused on small businesses. And I worked with Mike earlier, where he helped me with this playbook called priority mapping. Mike is a founder who turned into product strategy, marketing expert. Now he's an investment director at Mark IAF. But before we start the session, I just will take a couple of minutes to tell you more about TIE. TIE is the world's largest not-for-profit organization with a focus on fostering entrepreneurship. There are four key pillars that we focus on: education, networking, mentoring, and investing. TIE chapters are run by entrepreneurs and professionals who volunteer their time, and it's supported by sponsors who provide financial support. There are two kinds of members. TIE charter member are someone who are experienced. They are founders, professionals, investors, lawyers. They volunteer their time. And TIE associate members are typically founders and startup employees who have interest in entrepreneurship, or corporate executives who possibly want to work with entrepreneurs, or they have ideas of entrepreneurship themselves. They join in, and we provide pro bono mentorship most of the time. There are some events which are paid events, some events which are non-paid events. Free events. This is the entire season we are doing set of events. We are starting it off with Mike. The next Wednesday, we have an event with Alex Baker. He's a VC at Relay Ventures, followed by Mark Evans, and then we have a few more events lined up. So keep an eye on your email. You would keep getting invites. Please sign up. All the events this season is going to be free. Mike, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kanchan. Let me just share my screen here. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Excellent. I just want to get set up here. Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me today. What I'd like to talk about is a framework I've created called priority mapping. And it's how to scale your company, or how to think about scaling your company. The goal is to build your company into an unstoppable freight train, not to build a Ferrari. So we want freight trains, not Ferraris. Ferraris, they look good, they go fast, they're interesting technology. They can't take very many people, and one bump in the road and it's demolished. A freight train takes a little bit to build up momentum, but once it has momentum, it's completely unstoppable. And that's what we're looking for. The world's changed today, and not just because of COVID. Customers want choice now. And it used to be expensive to get a product to market. So 10 years ago, it was an incredible feat to just get a product to market. And that acted as a natural first pass filter to a lot of companies. And to a lot of companies trying to get to market. And as a result, less companies got to market, consumers had less choice. But the world's changed, and now it's never been cheaper to get something to market. And so the consumers have choice. And the winning companies are tailoring the same product to different customer segments. So in the 911, there's 12 different versions of just the 911. For Colgate, there's 17 versions of Colgate, and there's 52 versions of Tide. The reality is that every single segment is different. And if you don't get this right, it can cost you your company. BlackBerry dominated the market when they first came out. They created the market and they dominated the initial segment in the market. But then they painted the rest of the market with the same shade of gray. So they thought that everybody else looked like the government and the business travelers that they originally had. And it ended up costing them the company. But if you get this right, if you treat each segment different, you get scale. So you can grow like Uber did, or you can grow like ClickFunnels did, from going from 0 to $100 million in 3 years with no outside capital. So what's the framework? So first, you want to find something that works, do it more often, and keep getting better at it. Most people think that means different products, but what it really means is different customer segments. ClickFunnels has one core product, their website builder. They took that website builder and made it work with supplements, coaches, online marketers, network marketing, and they just copied it from one segment to the other. Uber did the exact same thing, just with cities. The second thing you want to do is find and work on the fundamentals. So if you look at any pro athlete, they spend most of their time working on their fundamentals, the dribble, their footwork, the free throw. And so I was always wondering, what are the fundamentals in startups or in to grow and scale your company? And it turns out that every company, from Uber to Apple to your company to the coffee shop down the street, they all have the same 3 core habits, and you want to focus on them. And then the third thing is to realize that a plan is just a plan, and you need simple routines that will keep you on track with the outside world when you get hit in the face over and over again by things that are outside of your control. So just imagine for a second how fast you could go if your team was on the same page with your ideal customer segment. If you knew, or if they knew, what were the right habits to focus on, and if you knew how to keep them focused and on the same page with simple routines. So in 2008, I started a company called Bering Media. And in 2014, we sold it to a partner of ours called Audience Partners. And then 3 years later, we ended up selling that company to Altice, the 4th largest cable company in the US. It was that last 3 years that were really interesting for me. So in the first 6 years when I was running Bering, I didn't really have time to, sit down and think about strategy or think about whether we're doing the right things, because I just didn't know how to do it. So I was focused on customers, on payroll, fundraising, whatever fire was happening at that moment in time. But in that last 3 years, when I was with Audience Partners, I had a little bit more time. And so I actually looked into all sorts of different frameworks on how do we know we are working on the right thing. So I looked at jobs to be done, outcome-driven innovation, pirate metrics, OKRs, and all of these frameworks made a ton of sense to me, but I could never really figure out how they kind of fit together cohesively into a single strategy. After we sold the company, I took a year off, and then I joined Mars IAF as an investment director and started mentoring at the DMZ as well, and that's where I met Kanchan. And that gave me time and perspective to sort of start figuring out how all of these features fit together into a strategy. So let's jump in. So the first question I always had was, how do you solve a hard problem? The answer is quite simple, is you break it down into its component parts and you solve each component piece by piece. So the next question was, well, what's your hard problem, or what's the hard problem you're focused on inside your company? And the answer is, it's your billion-dollar market. It's your big giant market. And one of the things I've noticed is that the venture community gives startups advice all the time that they need a billion-dollar market. And while it's true, you do need to be going after a big market, I think from a tactical standpoint, it leads founders and companies down the wrong direction. They think they need to solve the entire market all in one go. And so when I started mentoring companies, I started drawing on the whiteboard. You have customer segments along the top and customer problems on the left. And this is a way that we can start breaking down our market. And we can think about it in these different squares. Now, a lot of companies think that their solution or their category is their market. And that's your solution is your category, not your market. Your market is your customers and the problems that they have. Your solution is just the intersection of those two, because it turns out that you can stack a lot of different solutions to solve the exact same problem. I can go from here to Ottawa by taking an airplane, taking the train, taking the bus. I could walk if I had enough time. There's a lot of different ways to solve the same problems for the same customers. And so we need to understand that they're different, and we need to understand what market we're working on. So let's take a quick example here. I like to use Uber because everybody understands Uber. It was a fast-growing company, and it's easy to visualize. But Uber defined their market roughly with transportation worldwide. We can get a little bit more specific by breaking it down into individual cities, as well as the context of the problem. But obviously they didn't start there. They started with Uber Black in San Francisco doing ground transportation. And they stayed there and they made that work until it was green, until it was successful. And so how long do you think that they were focused on Uber Black in San Francisco doing ground transportation before they did anything else? Were they making hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, or tens of millions of dollars? Now, I don't know perfectly the answer. I found an answer on Quora that said that they were making about $1 million. And that sounds about right. They probably didn't stay in San Francisco doing just Uber Black until they were making tens of millions of dollars, but nor did they say, oh, we're making a couple $100,000. Great, let's take this and start scaling it. They focused in on Uber Black San Francisco till they were probably making $1 million. And that became $1 million playbook for them. So they were working out all the kinks of their playbook, their technology, their operations, their marketing plan, or their messaging, how they actually ran that playbook. Once they decided that they were going to expand, where did they go next? Did they take Uber Black to different cities, or did they stay in San Francisco and develop UberX? Now, when I ask when I ask an audience like this in live, we can do a little bit of a poll. I usually get about a 50-50 response. Some say, well, of course, they went to different cities. They took Uber Black and scaled it. And then others say, well, that's crazy. They're already dominating in San Francisco. That's where they're based. They'd go deeper in San Francisco. It's easier to sell to the same market. Our goal to scale faster is to find something that works, do it more often, and keep getting better. And that doing it more often and that's something that works is our segment. And so they took Uber Black and they scaled it from San Francisco to Chicago to New York, Toronto, Paris. They turned $1 million playbook into $5 to $10 million basically overnight. So they took something that worked and scaled it very, very fast. Now, the question I get is, do you always scale sideways or horizontally? And the answer is no. So if you look at the other end of the extreme, you've got SpaceX, where they've sold to NASA, and they're probably not going to find many other NASAs in the world. And so they're continually doing more and more missions and making more and more money from the same customers. So your goal is to find the least path of resistance, change as little as possible, and scale as fast as possible. So that could be the same solution to different customers in Uber's case, or the same customers to different solutions in SpaceX's case. Every company, every market is different. It depends on the competitors that are around you, the market dynamics, your sales cycle. There's a lot of factors that play into it. And your goal is to figure out which is the least path of resistance. If you do this, though, your goal is ultimately to be focused, not scattered. So too many companies that we see are trying to do too many things, either the same product to just different types of customers, where any one feature is only being used by 10%, 30% of their customers. You want all of your customers using all of your product. That is the fastest way that you can make money in the least amount of work. So we want focus, not scattered. As an investor, one of the common stories I see when the companies miss their numbers and are coming in, ran out of money and looking for a bridge round is we used to define our market as this big giant market, and we tried to do too much. We died of indigestion. We couldn't swallow it all at the same time. We couldn't tackle it all, but we got smarter. We now know that we don't have, our market's not this big market, it's this smaller market, but we're out of money and now we need to raise more money. Don't let that be you. Your goal is to figure out how to focus in on the customers that drive the best return on investment for you. So let's talk a little bit about how we figure out when to explore and when to actually double down. So the first way we break down our market is by squares. So if I gave you 5 squares like this, so imagine it was in, your market, or it could be a Facebook campaign, a marketing campaign. You had 5 different tactics and you know nothing about it. How would you allocate your budget? Well, obviously you would allocate it based on, you'd load balance your budget relatively evenly across the different tactics, assuming you have enough budget to handle all the tactics. You might bias for one because you have a bit more of a gut instinct on one versus the other, but you don't have enough data to yet go all in on one or another one of the tactics. You'd run that for a while, and then you'd get something like this. You'd get some that are showing promise, some that are kind of showing promise, and some that aren't quite working yet. At this point in time, if you have enough signal, you'd be ludicrous to load balance your budget or spread your budget evenly across all of this. You'd want to do more of the green and less of the gray. And it's just basic optimization. So you can have squares in your market that work, that kind of work, and that don't work yet. So it's not treating the whole market or your whole company as one, but you can have some squares inside of that work, that kind of work, and that don't work yet. And you're obviously going to be working on multiple things at the same time. And so you want to be working on things that are driving revenue today. And you want to be working on things that can drive revenue tomorrow. And then you may, depending on your resources, work on things that potentially will drive revenue in the future that you need to start working on now to lay the tracks for it. Depending on your situation, you might choose to allocate 70% of your resources on things that are driving revenue today, 20% on tomorrow and expansion plans, and 10% on future bets. You might decide to do 50-50 on today and tomorrow and nothing in the future. Or you might choose to spend only 10% on things today and planning more for the future. Your market is dying, it's under siege, it's competitive, you're running out of space in that market. There's lots of reasons why you'd want to be able to do one or the other. Your situation is unique, and you just need to figure out where are you allocating your resources based on short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. Now, when you're starting out, you don't have anything that works. So your first objective is to find something that works. So we're going to run experiments, and we want to run experiments as wide as possible, so that we want them to be as different as possible. So again, if I go back to like a Facebook, a marketing campaign, it's probably better to test out different types of creatives or different messaging versus testing out, green versus red creative when you're first starting out, because messaging and the actual creative itself is far different than just the same creative but different colors. So we want those tests and experiments to be as wide as possible, so it gives us enough signal, or as much signal as we possibly can. But eventually you're gonna find something that works. Most of you hopefully or probably are somewhere here where you're in the process of transitioning from exploration mode into execution mode, because you now have something inside of your market that works. When you do, your goal is to now not look at far away or wide squares, but you want to look nearby. You want to look for things that are similar. So in Uber's case, Uber Black in San Francisco and Uber Black in Toronto looked very similar. They were nearby. They didn't have to change very much. They had to create a new operations team in Toronto, but their product stayed the same. Their onboarding stayed the same. Their operations, their marketing, their messaging, everything else stayed the same. Far away squares like UberX, which they might have been working on at the same time, is vastly different. It's a whole new product. It's a whole new operations, whole new way to onboard drivers. It was a new marketing message. They had to change their messaging to change the brand of the company to show that they were going after different market segments, or to appeal to different market segments. And so it took a lot more effort to do that. And that's considered a far away square because it's difficult for us to do. Now, once you do find something that works, you want to remember that that square is ideally, $1 million playbook. And so we can take that and go copy, paste, paste, paste to nearby squares and scale up our revenue and our company a lot faster. But we have to remember that every time we go to a new square, even if it's a nearby square, it goes from gray to yellow to green. So just because it worked Uber Black in San Francisco, just because it worked there, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work exactly the same in Toronto or in Paris or New York or Chicago. Each city is slightly different. Our hypothesis, because they're nearby squares, is that it's very similar and it'll go from gray to green very fast. Occasionally, you'll go into a new segment or square and it won't be what you thought it was. It's going to be vastly different. And you need to treat them differently, how you resource them, how you expect and forecast the revenue that's going to come out for them. You need to be prepared that they're different. As you do this, though, you're going to be building up a pipeline of the ability to take something from gray to yellow to green really, really fast. You're going to be hardening your business model. And you can think of it like building or tightening the bolts on your car. So if you're in the parking lot and you tighten the bolts on the wheels of your car, you can probably drive around the parking lot without issues. But if you take that same car up on the highway, those are going to shake loose and you're going to crash. So your goal, while you're finding your first square that works and doing it more often and keep getting better, is to tighten in the bolts of your wheels. So get better at your operations, hardening your software, hardening your go-to-market strategy, how you turn things from gray to yellow to green, so that you can start scaling up your operations faster and you don't descend into chaos mode as you start scaling up. As you're doing that, or once you've done that, then you're going to start looking for more. So then we're going to look at different opportunities. So we now have this engine that takes things from gray to yellow to green, and we're building out our machine. We're building out our freight train. And what we want to do is we want to look at different opportunities that are far away, that are different, that can change the trajectory of our growth. Gives us bigger markets, gives us different growth speeds, things that we can scale potentially faster, things that will diversify us as a company. All of those fall under the find more and future revenue bets. And the question becomes, how are you allocating your resources between your production machine and your future bets machine? Now, something that people always ask me then is, well, if we define these smaller squares, does that mean we're saying no to customers? And it doesn't always mean you're saying no to customers. Sometimes, like Uber, if you're not in the geography, that means you're basically saying no to those customers. For most companies, it doesn't mean you're saying no. It just means that you're not prioritizing the features necessarily that they need, or that they can use your application or your program or your service, and it just won't work as great for them, or you're just not tailoring or focusing your efforts there just yet. But what it allows you to do is you can think of all of these squares like buckets of water. And so while you're focused on a few green ones or a number of green ones, you can watch which other buckets are naturally filling up. The ones that are naturally filling up and that customers naturally like it are probably your nearby squares that are going to tell you where you should be focusing your efforts on next. but it also gives you, and it'll start stringing together your scale plan. So you're going to start with your big market, and you're going to break it down into its component parts, which are squares. So the next question is for each of those squares, how do we define whether it's working? How do we know that it's green, yellow, or gray? So there's two ways to look at any square. You want that's working. You want a repeatable business model, and you want a large market share. It's pretty simple. And it turns out they're both related. It's just two sides of the same coin. One, your repeatable business model is from your perspective. It's things that you have in your control. And then the second one, a large market share, that's from the market's perspective. It's outside of you, it's out of your control. Now, to get a large market share, you need a repeatable business model. To get a repeatable business model, you need repeatable habits. So let's look at the second way to break down your market, which is your habits. So the three core habits that every single company has is making money, winning customers, and delivering value. To make money, you've got to win customers and you have to deliver value. It's very, very simple. Now these habits, they can be repeatable, they can be kind of repeatable, and they can be not repeatable yet. So the question is how do you define what's repeatable? First, you got to do something once, then you got to do something 3 times, then 10 times. At 10 times is when you can barely start calling something repeatable. And think about this in any way, in everything that you do in your life. Whenever you try and do something new, you've got to do it once, 3 times, 10 times. Everybody goes through those same processes. The first 3 times you do something, you're just basically learning the fundamentals and going through the motions, but you don't really understand anything. You're not sure how to do it. Somewhere between 3 and 10, you're starting to get your legs under you and you're starting to figure things out. And somewhere after 10 to 100 times, you're starting to sort of gain momentum and gain speed. It's the exact same thing. It was actually my daughter who taught me this. I was watching her try to figure out how to walk. And then once she figured out how to walk, I was watching her climb up her high chair. And she just started climbing the first rung of the ladder and then went down. And she did that 3 times. And then she went to the next rung after she did the first rung 3 times. And she got to that one 3 times, which means she got to the first one 6 times. And she just kept building up her momentum when after about an hour or so, she made it all the way to the top and she was totally comfortable going up and down. This is how we learn. This is how we do any skill that we're learning. Once we get to 10, our goal is to get to 30, 100, 300, 1,000 times. We're just trying to increase our rate of repeatability. Now, the interesting thing is that when you get to 30 per year, that's really 10 per quarter. When you're at 100 per year, that's 10 per month. And at 1,000 per year, that's 10 per week. We're just building up our rate of repeatability. And over time, your threshold for what you inside your company considers as repeatable will start to go up. So an experiment for you will be if you've only ever done it 100 times and most of your business or your main channel and way to win customers, you're winning it at 10 per week or 1,000 per year. If you've got something that's at 30 per year or 10 per quarter, it's still an experiment for you because it's not going to move the needle. So now that we know how often we need to do it, we need to figure out what we need to measure. So for winning customers, it's just the number of customers that are giving you their money or their time. So customers pay you with either their money or their time. If you don't have any paying customers, you're looking for the amount of time that they're giving you. If you have customers, you're looking for the amount of time, number of customers that are actually giving you money. It's the only signal that matters. Everything else is a leading indicator, but it is the only signal that matters. For delivering value, they're again voting with their wallets or their time. So depending on how they pay you, they're either going to continue to give you time. So we want to know how frequently those customers are giving you their time, or if you're paying, or they're charging you on or you're charging on like a SaaS-based model, We want to know the frequency at which they're giving you their money. So the question becomes, do you have 10 customers that are giving you their money? And then all 10 of those customers, are they on average giving you their money or time more than 10 times each? These are how we decide or figure out whether we have something that's working. And over time, our thresholds will grow. So our minimum bar to consider something working will start to go up. Now, roadmaps. So when I was originally the CEO of the company, we were just setting roadmaps based on our gut and intuition, and they were largely feature-based. And then as I turned into the CTO after we got acquired, I wanted to put a little bit more rigor behind our roadmaps. And I used to start off with my roadmaps as being completely feature-based. So we're going to build this, and behind that was an assumption that that feature was going to drive something. But because it was a feature that was on our roadmap, success was delivering our feature. And then we would move on to the next feature. And what happened was we didn't have many, it happened a lot where we would release a feature and it wouldn't do what we expected it to do. People weren't using it. People weren't engaging it. We weren't winning the customers we thought, but we were already on to the next roadmap item. And so I started building our roadmaps based on these 3 core habits. Is it helping us make money, win customers, or deliver value? The same feature or tactic can help us win customers and deliver value and make us money, but it has to ladder up to one or more of these 3 core habits. Sometimes we don't have direct line of sight to that. And so we need to break these core habits into their component parts, which would be sub-tactics. So winning customers could be the ad campaigns that we're running. Are we doing paid ads? Are we doing inbound and SEO type campaigns? Are we doing direct cold outreach for delivering value? Is it if we want to increase the value we're delivering, we want to increase the amount of time they spend with a particular feature inside our application as a whole. We want to get a report back to them faster so they get value faster. All of these tactics need to ladder up to one of these 3 core habits. And then the measurement of those 3 habits is whether we've been successful or not successful in our feature development. So it's not just delivering the feature or the system for the tactic. It's whenever the core habit numbers move, tells us whether we're happy with our roadmap item or not. So our features and our tactics are just assumptions until they move one of these core habits. First, as an organization, you're going to measure company-wide. So first you're going to look at, I need to get my company winning customers or delivering value. So the number of customers that pay us or the frequency at which customers give us their time or money. I need to get that number up from 1 to 3 to 10 to 100 first. That is primary. That's our primary objective. Then I want to look across our squares. So if my company is at 100 customers, if I've won 100 customers in the year, how have I won those 100 customers? Did I win them all in one square or in a number of squares? So this is why founders come to me all the time and say, I don't understand why I'm making more money as a company than this other company that I see over here, but they've got a better valuation than I do. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it comes down to how focused and how repeatable is your company. If you're making $1 million, but that $1 million is made across 5 different tactics, 5 different squares, 5 different ways to win customers, and 5 different products, you're not very repeatable. You're winning basically one customer is giving you a little bit of money, and then another customer is giving you money for a totally different reason in a totally different market segments, and you won them through a totally different channel. Not very scalable, not very repeatable. And so your valuation is going to take a suffer as a result of it. Whereas you could have another company that's making less money than you potentially, but they've got one type of customer, one product, and one channel that's firing on all cylinders. Much more repeatable, and we can throw gasoline on that and scale it up much, much faster. And so it's your rate of repeatability at a square and a habit level that tells you on Are you building a freight train, or are you still searching for your Ferrari basically, and you're trying to figure out which square, which habits work for you and inside of your business? So those 100 customers can either be focused or they can be scattered. And that's what we're really, really looking for. Once you know whether you're seeing success, so your habits, your tactics, and your rate of repeatability you're happy with, the next question becomes, does the market actually agree with you? So our goal is a large market share. And there's two ways we can get to a large market share. We can look at the market and say, we have a very small percentage of the market, and we need to build a lot of things. We need to change a lot of our sales tactics to go and win and convince and deliver value to a larger segment, our larger population inside of the market that we've defined. So we've got to go build a lot of things. It's expensive and it takes a lot of time. The second way is we can just define a smaller market. So we can niche our market down such that the boundaries that we've created are smaller, where our natural customers are already in this smaller market. And so now we are the category king in this smaller market. So how big was Uber's first square? So Uber was first looking at US, big cities, San Francisco, high income, taxis and limos as competition. And they were only looking at the iPhone. They didn't build their Android app for another, I think it was 2 years from when they started. So the question is, how big do you think that market was? My guess, it was probably in the tens of millions. It wasn't millions of dollars. It wasn't hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. So it was probably in the tens of millions of dollars. And as we talked about earlier, they stayed there until they were making about $1 million a year. So let's say that it's a $10 million market. They were making 10% of, they won 10% of the market. They were the king inside the market that they defined. So the question I have for you is, what size of a market do you need to make $1 million? And that's the challenge we generally have, is we define $1 billion market when we're trying to make millions of dollars. And what happens is we tell sales, go and win anything in this $1 billion market, because that's what we're defining as our market. So they'll go and talk to customers all over that market and start winning customers on the left-hand side. Whereas product went and figured out, well, I can't build everything. I'm a shared resource. I can't build anything for that entire market. So I'm going to build something, and I'm building for this other market over here on the left, on the right-hand side. It's all within the same market that we've defined. That's $1 billion market, and we got misalignment. And this is when your internal company descends into chaos mode. And that's what happened at my companies. We defined this big giant market, and every customer wanted something different. And all I felt like I was doing inside the company was triage. I was just trying to figure out and horse trade one feature versus another, but the features were not equal. One feature was for one customer set, another feature was for another customer set, and we didn't know which one to build. So what we did is we just load balanced, or just bounced around between the features, and we were getting whiplash left and right. The smaller we define our market, the harder it is for everybody to get aligned, and we start bringing our teams into alignment, and they know what they're doing. The goal is to find this segment that works, to define a smaller market, to get our team on the same page. Make it work, and then take it and scale it to other segments that are nearby that don't take a lot of effort to change. We don't have to change our marketing message. We don't have to change our product, or we have to marginally change our marketing message, marginally change our product, and scale it as fast as we possibly can. Once we've defined a smaller market where we have a large market share, our team can get focused around the same 3 core habits. So making money, winning customers, and delivering value. So rather than having 100 customers that we win every single year or every single month, being across multiple squares, we can start focusing that in on the same square and aligning our team onto the same goals that they're going after. Constraints done in the right way is incredibly valuable. You can take a garden hose, and if you constrain it just in the right way, you can turn it into a powerful pressure washer. And that's all we're trying to do with your company and with your resources. So we're trying to take our market and we're trying to break it down into its component parts as squares. And then we want to look into each of those squares and find the 3 core habits and figure out, do we have something that's repeatable, kind of repeatable, and not repeatable yet? The next thing we want to do is we want to take all of these puzzle pieces that we now have and we know how they work, and we want to assemble them into routines. So we want to start with our yearly planning and our end goal. So we want to start with our overall revenue goal, figure out how much we're spending on today, tomorrow, and in the future. We want to look at what's working, what's kind of working, and what's not working yet. And we want to order them based on return on investment. So we want to do the things where we make a lot of money with the least amount of work first, plan that out, and keep moving right until we run out of money. Then we want to take our remaining budget that we've partitioned off for future bets and place our future bets. And that's our yearly strategy. Every quarter, we want to look at our core habits. So how are we making money, winning customers, and delivering value? Which ones do we want to improve? We want to look at the company level. Then we want to look at a square level, a habit level, and maybe even a tactic level. So we want to break those down to objectives and key results to keep our team aligned. And we want to remember that a product generally solves 80% of a market. It's that last 20% that's unique to that square and those habits for that square. And those are the ones that determine how fast we go in each individual square. And so if you get those right, that's how you go faster. Then you want to look monthly and weekly, and you want to do check-ins. Now, if you've done your quarterly and your yearly planning right, then you're going to check in on a monthly or weekly basis, and things are going to come your way. And you're just going to ask yourself, does that change the square we're going after? Or does it help us on the square that we're currently looking at? Does it align to our strategy? Does it align to the habits that we're working on? Sorry. If yes, then we add it to our list and to our backlog. If no, then we put it on the infinity list, and it sits there for when we're going to change and work on those squares or those habits. It makes recency bias and fires that are happening and shiny object ideas that everybody have, it makes them easier to sort through. Now you have to remember that there's a lot outside of your control. You have customers that are outside of your control, competitors that are outside of your control, regulation that's outside of your control, COVID, and your team. It's your routines, these weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly check-ins that are going to keep you on the same page and allow you to adapt to these changing environments. And that's how you build up your freight train. Now, Kanchan, I want to do a time check. We're kind of going over here. I do have another section, but I want to be mindful of time and questions.
Yeah, how long the second section is? We got 15 minutes.
So I got probably about another 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah, good to go.
Okay. So this will change the way you look at your whole company. I had a company that I was working with that was churning customers like crazy. It was consuming all of the company's resources, the sales team, the engineering team, the marketing team, the CEO's time. And it turns out that when we looked at it, they were churning all their customers in their gray squares. Their green squares and their yellow squares are actually going really, really, really well. And they had no more work to do. Once we realigned the company to this, their stress went down, their revenue went up, and things became easier. Also, I was working with a company that thought that they had to prospect. They had a prospect list of 1,000 customers. They couldn't handle that kind of prospect list on their outreach team. They thought they needed more resources to reach out to more customers. Turned out, though, they were trying to reach out to customers that were all over their market. And so we just prioritized their prospecting list. We looked at the customers that they had a better chance of winning, that they knew that they could win faster, that they knew that it already worked, that they had case studies, and that their messaging already worked for. With the same amount of resources, they were able to scale their revenue a lot faster. This also helps find new opportunities, and this is what happened in my case. So I like Uber as an example because it's easy to understand. The thing I don't like about it is that not every company is Uber, and Uber has this part of geography that makes it really easy to visualize sort of what I'm talking about here. So we needed a new language that could work for any market. So we came up with lenses and filters. Lenses is a way to view your market, and filters is your optional way, or optional views or ways to reduce the size of your market. So if we go back to Uber as an example, we can look at Uber's market through the lens of region and filter it down by US, Canada, or Europe. We can also look at it by city type. So we can look at big cities, small cities, or rural, or income, distance, other options. It's all of these lenses and filters that cause it to not be a simple 2x2 matrix like what I draw on the whiteboard. What I like about this drawing on the whiteboard, though, is it's an easy way to starting to think about why it's important to focus in on a particular square. But the reality is that it's much more complex than that. Your market's more complex. Uber's market is more complex. Everybody's market is complex. So Uber, after 8 years, they were the market leader and Lyft was a distant second. And so the question is was there room for another unicorn in the market? And the answer is there was actually room for 2 more unicorns, and it was Lime and Bird. And it's because they filtered out their market slightly differently. They were looking at the distance lens at 0 to 1 kilometer. So it turns out Uber's really good from 1 to 50 kilometers. Anything above 50 kilometers, and you're better off renting a car or owning a car. Anything less than a kilometer, and Uber doesn't actually work very well. You needed actually a different solution, and that's where scooters come into play. So what's nice about this 2x2 matrix, though, is it gives us hints onto what our lenses and filters are. Customer segments are really just who your customers are and all the attributes associated with it. Customer problems are your what attributes, what problems we're solving, and solutions on how they solve them today are your how related options. And so you can take a problem or a solution, your solution, and just start asking why related questions to it. So I need a new app so I can order a car. Well, why do you want to order a car? Well, I want to go home. Okay, well, now we're getting into the problem space. So where else do I want to go aside from home? Well, I want to go home, or I want to go to work, or I want to go to a restaurant, I want to go to an airport. So the lens that I just looked through was where I want to go, so the drop-off location, and a bunch of different options on scope of work that I may or may not want to solve or use. I can ask more questions, and I can look at a pickup location, and I can keep going, and I can start defining out my market. So I can ask who related things, what related things, and how related things, and I can stack up a lot of lenses and filters. Now, it turns out that filters have the same properties as squares. So you have some that work, some that kind of work, and some that don't work yet. So for Uber, when I first started taking it, I was taking it to the airport, but every time I landed back in Toronto, I would always take an airport car home. And that's because Uber didn't actually work very well getting picked up at the airport. The driver didn't know where to meet me. The airport didn't have a waiting point at this point in time. That was a filter that didn't quite work for Uber. Now, that was a product related one. It didn't necessarily stop me from using it. But this is all that Lime and Bird did, is they looked at what Uber did well, what they didn't do so well, and what wasn't working for them really well at all. And that's how they found the 0 to 1 kilometer filter. And then they were able to say, okay, well, that requires a different solution. And that's where they came up with their scooters. You do this for the whole market, and you get a nice little color-coded chart like this. That forms the basis on how you build out your squares, or how you actually define your market segments. Something amazing happens, though, when you go through this process with your team, because you start asking questions. Well, why do we think it's green? Why do we think it's yellow? Why do we think it's gray? What are we missing? What do we need to build? What do we have to do? It's the conversations around this that starts getting your team on the same page. And it becomes a longer list that you're going to get different who related ones, how related ones, and what related ones. And you're going to get this nice color coded list where you can start having conversations around specifics on what we're actually focusing in as a company and what's in scope and what's out of scope. So when I started doing this, and we did this for my company, we had made an assumption early on in our company that we were a digital company and we were doing we were building an ad server. We were focused primarily on the US, or only exclusively on the US. We were working with cable-owned media buyers, their TV sales, their marketing department, their agencies. We had different ad buy sizes, and we were doing display, video, and mobile creatives. What we did wrong for the first 6-7 years of our lives was we made this assumption of digital, and we never really wrote it down or revisited it. And what happened is we didn't actually explore that there was this filter to the right called TV that our customers used and actually made billions of dollars rather than tens of millions or hundreds of millions off of. Once we looked at that filter and realized that we could pivot our technology to that filter, we sold the company within a couple of months. And so it's this language that you need to come up and figure out for your particular market that will lay the groundwork for your strategy. So putting priority mapping into practice, you can think of it like solving a big giant puzzle. The first thing you do is you dump out all the puzzle pieces. You move them around, you flip them over, make sure you've got all of them. That's your lenses and filters, is just getting all your puzzle pieces out on the table so you know what you're working with. Then what you're going to do is you're going to sort them around, and you're going to find the blue pieces for the sky, the yellow pieces for the sun, and the green pieces for the grass, and you're going to order them. Then you're going to figure out and start building up sort of your initial squares. And so those are putting the ones that are together and figuring out how they start fitting together and seeing if we can actually fit some of them together. And you're going to sort of build out your sort of building blocks. Then you're going to assemble some of them together into their components and build them up into parts of the sun, parts of the grass, parts of the sky. Then you're going to lay out the border around it. So you're going to get all your edge pieces and you're going to set the boundaries so you know where all of the pieces fit. Once you've done that, you can now turn it over to your team, and they've got the boundaries and the foundation in place to go and fill in the rest of the puzzle. And all you have to do is check in every month, every quarter, and every year. Every month, you're just going to check in and make sure nothing's changed. We're still on track. There's no major fires that we have to revector our plan. Every quarter, we're going to reset our quarterly objectives, our habits, check in to make sure we're doing everything, that nothing major has changed. And every year, we're going to do a complete rebuild of our strategy to make sure we know that we're going in the right direction. And anytime something major happens, we're going to do a massive shift and rebuild our strategy. If you want to find out more, I've written up some of this or all of this on my website. You can follow me. And Kenshin, we've got 5 minutes for questions. I'm happy to stay later though if there's more questions live.
Hi, this is Kanchan here. If you have any questions, you can type your questions in the Q&A box. We'll take them one by one with Mike. We could extend this for another 5 minutes or so beyond our original time. We would share the recordings, as well as you could reach out to Mike if you want us. If we have good feedback, we could possibly do another session with Mike sometime later this season. What do you say, Mike?
Yeah, sure. Happy to do so. Yeah, so you can, on my website, you can, my contact information's there, so you can reach out to me there as well. Nothing?
See one question in the chat window.
Oh, I'm not looking at the chat.
Hi. Yeah, I see someone's typed a huge question, or it's just a comment.
Okay, this is just a comment. Yeah, that's okay. Any other questions you can type in the Q&A. Just one question which I had, Mike, maybe it is relevant for everyone else as well. Do you think this is also relevant for pre-product market fit startups, or do you think this is relevant only once we have figured at least one square out?
Good question. So, so it's definitely relevant for pre-product market fit companies. You want to understand what's the market that you're looking at, what are the different lenses and filters that you have. So, what are your experiments that you could be running? So, you want to know, you should be experimenting with, this problem set or that problem set. Most products solve multiple problems for their customers. Most product sets have applications to multiple different types of customers, and there's different types of ways that you might win those customers. So different channels. So all of those are experiments, and if your rate of repeatability of your habits are not high enough and you're not happy with them, so they're not actually repeatable, then you're still in experimentation mode. And so first, that'll tell you whether you're in experimentation mode or in execution mode. And second, it should tell you to help you figure out where you should be experimenting. So are you experimenting wide? Are you experimenting narrow? Which different segments are you looking at?
Thanks, Mike. This is helpful. I don't think we have any questions coming in. Maybe, yeah, there comes one question. Yeah, we have a question from Mike. Yashvi, do you want to enable Michael Bradley to ask the question?
Yeah, I'm gonna enable Michael Bradley to ask the question. Yeah.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hey Michael, great session. Thank you so much for today. One of the things I wanted to ask about is when you've got a multidisciplinary team from sales and marketing through to product and technology, and then kind of the C-suite and management team, what have you found to be really effective tools at kind of communicating a product roadmap and those priorities and kind of your entire methodology across an organization when people aren't always product minded?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in my organization, I mean, granted, this was 3-4 years ago, we were a Jira shop. We tried everything we possibly could to do sort of road mapping stuff in Jira, and it was terrible for it, or at least we found it was terrible for it. There's new products that I know a bunch of people are using, like Product Board and Product Plan, that seem to be better. I don't have experience with them. To be honest, what I found for in your question, it looks like user stories. That's sort of on the Jira side, but on the product roadmap, use cases, segments, squares, and all that kind of stuff. I do most of the worksheets in just an Excel document. I've come up with a worksheet that allows this to be done in a really easy way, and then PowerPoint to get multiple teams aligned. So sales is never going to log into Jira, and so we ran our monthly and quarterly sessions using a PowerPoint to drive the conversation. Unfortunately, I don't really have any better thing than that at this point in time. I'm working on it though.
Great, thank you.
If I may add, at this point in time, we are pretty early days, but experimenting with Notion to combine all different forms of documents and data points and information in one place. Time will tell whether we are successful. If that happens, we'll certainly share with the community.
Are there any other questions from the audience?
Nope.
Thanks, Mike. I think we don't have any more questions right now. So everyone, oh, here comes one more question. Maybe we can just take that up. Yes, we can handle that.
Yeah. All right, Bo, you can go ahead.
Hi, Bo. You're muted, I think.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Good.
Thank you for a nice presentation. Quick question for you regarding building marketplaces, right? So currently, you know, there's that whole thing about the chicken and the egg, right? Where basically, which side do you feel first, demand side or supply side? We're trying to do more of the supply side, but I just want to hear from you, for example, how do you grow from like 1,000 accounts or 1,000 profiles or 1,000 businesses on a marketplace to like 10,000? What things can we start doing tomorrow, next week that could really turn the dial on growing our user base? Thank you.
Yeah, so it's great that you have 1,000, so you've got effectively data or signal to work with. You know, first thing I would do is look at how did we acquire those 1,000 profiles or accounts? Did we acquire them through 1,000 different channels, through a couple of channels, through one channel? And I would start segmenting based on that. So I would look at the habit, so the habit and the tactics that those profiles were acquired through already, and check out what our rate of repeatability is on those. And so ideally, you've won 200 to 500 of those profiles using a particular tactic. And so I'd want to do that one more and more and get better and keep getting better at that tactic. The second thing I would do is look across all those profiles and try to find the attributes. So what are the who related attributes, the what related attributes, and the how related attributes? Who are they? What do they look like? What are their demographics, their industry graphics, their psychographics? What problems are we solving? So what are their desires? What are the results they're looking for? What actions are we helping them do? What's the situation in which they're actually trying to solve their problem in, and how are they doing things today? So what were they using prior to your marketplace or application to solve that problem? Because problems are sticky and have been around for long periods of time. So they're already trying to solve the problem in some way. You're just giving them a newer, better way to do that. And try to find those lenses and filters, which ones are green, which ones are yellow, which ones are gray, and focus more on the green ones. So then you would point your habit or your tactic that you're winning customers at the green squares or green filters, and modify your messaging. So tighten up your messaging, tighten up your tactics, tighten up your workflow or your user journey that prioritizes that type of customer. And so you'll start seeing your rate of repeatability increase as you go from 1,000 to 10,000, because you're going to start narrowing your focus, but going faster.
Thank you very much. Awesome, Mike. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
No problem. On that note, you know, where I see most companies go wrong is we keep just trying to do more and more tactics. So we get something that kind of works, and then we get a new shiny object, and it's like, oh, I can also do this. I can also win customers over here, or I can also build this feature, or I can also do this other thing over here. When you're in exploration mode, you definitely want to do that. Once you get to hundreds, thousands of customers, maybe even just 10 customers, you want to start getting more and more narrow and focused in on, you know, what's already working, so you can basically be doubling down and pouring gasoline on it.
Fantastic. Great. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mike, for the session.
No
and
problem.
Thank you everyone for attending this. I look forward to you signing up for the next one, which is going to be Alex Baker, Relay Ventures. They're going to be talking about how have investors changed their lens, or how are they looking at opportunities differently, and how are they evaluating startups differently. And that session is going to be next Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. ET. Thank you so much.
Excellent. And like I said, feel free to go to my website. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thanks all.
Perfect.
Thank you so much,
and
Mike.
we would be sharing the recording, and the deck. The link will come to you in the email. Just give us a couple of days. Thank you so much.